Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Fame. This is Al Gilbert. I'm the Chief Listening Officer for advisoryoptions.net. This is where we help people find new jobs, we help businesses find new customers, and we help sales presenters create presentations that people actually want to listen to. So I love listening to interesting people. So I'm going to share my screen in a second. And my guest today is none other than Norm Rose here in the Bay Area. He's president of Travel Tech Consulting and senior technology analyst for Focusrite. He is very knowledgeable, been around a long time. I don't want to say Norm is old, but he does recall the Pan Am logo over my shoulder. And also, if Warren Buffett is the financial oracle of Omaha, Norm is the travel oracle of San Francisco. Welcome, Norm.
Oh, well, that's quite a build-up there, Al. I'll go. Let me get a cloth so I can shine my crystal ball a little bit better.
No worry. Hey, I always like to start at the beginning, and that is, where did you grow up, and what did your parents do for a living?
I grew up in New Jersey. You can tell by my accent, right?
A little bit.
Every so often, especially when I'm back east.
Right.
My dad actually was in what was a very big business after World War II, which he was in World War II, which was raising money for veterans. And so he was a raiser for veterans. My mom was a housewife, but was a Hebrew teacher and used to tutor kids for their bar mitzvah lessons and things like that.
Very important.
I grew up in Bergen County, which is just kind of a stone's throw from New York City. It's about 20 minutes from the George Washington Bridge, so it's very much a suburban community of New York City.
And you went to University of Maryland. What was your major?
It was in business administration with a focus on marketing.
And focus on marketing. How did you get into travel? Was United Airlines your first travel job?
It was. I mean, I was as fortunate as you can get. I ended up answering an ad in the Washington Post. I was in another industry. I actually just sent. I did the thing you're not supposed to do. I sent my resume without a cover letter, but I got an interview. And so at that point, United was very much interested in trying to bring on people from outside the travel industry. So I had a little bit of a leg up there and joined United in 1982.
That was many logos ago.
Many management teams ago, right?
Yeah, and then later on you went to Sun Microsystems, and that's where I met you as a travel manager. So you have been both a supplier and a buyer. You know everyone's pain, right?
I do, and you know the thing is, I pretty much have kept that same kind of multiple viewpoint or multiple kind of perspective as I've been a consultant since '95, because my majority of the work I've done is more on the supply side, whether technology or distribution or major suppliers. But I also work with a very large customer, U.S. federal government, as a buyer. So I'm always very keen on that. Also, the work I do with Focusrite often is focused on the corporate travel market. So I've done a lot of research with corporate travel buyers, and spoke to everyone extensively about lots of different issues over the last few years. So I believe I do kind of retain that perspective of both the buy and sell side.
Great. So, as you know, we've both been in the business a long time. We've seen a lot of challenges to corporate travel and travel in general. We've seen the evaporation of the airline commissions in '95, the Twin Towers in 2001, the economic crash in 2008. Is this about the worst you've ever seen?
I'm afraid it is, yeah. I mean, I thought that certainly 9/11 could, I was stranded in Florida. I was working with a large hotel and resort company, and I walked out of the room and there was a TV standing in the hallway showing that the Twin Towers had been hit. So, yeah, I thought that was the worst I would ever see, but COVID completely shutting down, especially shutting down the corporate travel industry, this is going to take some time to recover. This has been very, very challenging.
Very challenging indeed. So as business travel returns, with the legacy GDS TMCs, will they lose business to the multi-channel travel marketplaces like Onriba and Internet Travel Solutions? Or do you think they'll manage to retain business by acquiring and licensing open technology companies like Traxo, Where2, and Upside Business Travel, or a combination of both?
Well, I was hoping you could do a little longer question, Al.
Yeah,
More
give me,
compound. No, I'm just kidding. But
yeah,
the answer is yes and no, right? So, the jury's still out a little bit on this. I would say the things that are absolutely clear, that are very clear, if you're going to read the signpost, is business commercial terms are changing for the TMC. Look at the NDC agreement that Air France KLM cut with Amadeus. What did it say? It's going to be very similar to the private channel that we saw prior to this, which means very simply this idea of airlines paying GDSs and then a portion of that gets rebated back to TMC is just not going to work. Therefore, it becomes a question of who has better technology and who can access total content. Now, you look at the large TMCs, they recognize now what it's been probably 2-3 years that they had to access hotel content from OTAs because there was content they were missing that was causing friction. My gosh, we're having that today with airlines, even within the context of COVID and all the bad things that are happening. Certain continuing to push inventory only through NDC channels. And as long as we have that environment, we're going to have strain on all these systems that exist at the TMCs that are based on GDS only technology. Now, that being said, I think the big TMCs, from the knowledge I have of them, all are working on their own independent platforms as they've done with the OTAs and hotels. I think you'll see some integrated NDC and non-NDC content, but the key is going to be the travel agent's desktop, because the complaint that's been levied against this movement towards more of a personalized approach and more of shifting the quote from being developed by the GDS to the quote being developed by the airline, that's the big change here, is that, as we move forward with this, we're going to need new systems to be able to access this content. And if you don't have access to that content, so it's clear to me that the big TMCs are building their own platforms in order to accommodate this. So I think there's going to be a mixture. The question really is who's going to be the clear winner after this? Because in all those situations you described, suddenly there was a clear winner. What happened after the dot-com bubble burst? That's when the OTAs really took off. What happened after the Great Recession? That's when Airbnb and Uber and Lyft took off. So will it be these new next generation folks like TripActions or Travel Perk or Lola or any of these? I mean, some of them are a little bit more heavily weighted on the small end of the marketplace, which is a different discussion. But will they be able to move up the food chain and capture a larger percentage of kind of the mid-market, or that, I think it depends upon how much of a differentiated product they really have and how slow the rest of the market is in adapting to that. So the reason why a lot of those prior examples succeeded was the speed with which they attacked the marketplace. We've seen some of these players that I mentioned a moment ago spending considerable dollars even during COVID to market their brand, to go out there and try to obtain that, and to try to set up in the mind of the consumer when demand comes back that they're differentiated. So
Mhm.
we'll have to see how well that does. Last point about that, we talk a lot about the tech stack and the tech stack's and so forth. This is all about data and customer insight. That's what this is all about. So who has the best data? Who has the best customer insight? It's my opinion that intermediaries like TMCs are in a better position than airlines by themselves, because the TMC sees all the choices, all the options chosen by that traveler. So therefore, if the airline is going to control the quote, which is what NDC is about, why not work with the TMC to jointly figure out what's the best offer for that customer? Those if those newer TMCs, those next generation TMCs are able to do that in a more nimble fashion and a more effective fashion with airlines, then we're going to see a separation. So that's why it's both yes and no.
Okay. And ultimately, like everything in life, it comes down to the financial interest of the TMC and the customer. So there's been a lot of chatter about changing the compensation model for TMCs. The transaction model has been around for as long as the GDS is, and for a long time, technology drove the necessity of using transactions as the model. I'm going to quote 4 models that I think of. You tell me what you think of them that TMCs might go to. One is I call the Netflix model. So for a set subscription fee, instead of getting a certain number of DVDs, you get a certain number of profiles. And for those profiles, you get unlimited travel. The next one is a law firm model. You pay a set retainer paid for by the month with perhaps additional fees for special events like events and stuff like that. The third one is the concur model. For a monthly fee, you get a maximum number of transactions instead of expense reports. And then the final one is the SaaS model, which is you start with a freemium product, maybe basic transactions, and then you can upgrade to the premium product, which I think more the travel marketplace vendors are starting to do. Do you think that's possible for the TMCs, any one of those models?
I'm most attracted to that third model, the concur model, because
Okay.
I think that's more of a traditional software licensing model. Is we'll give you these number of seats, and then if you go over those seats, we'll give that. The first one, I thought you had said there would be a subscription price, and for that you don't have to pay for travel.
You would get the subscription price would cover, let's say, 50 profiles.
Okay.
And those profiles would be charged X number of dollars per profile. They would charge travel as little or as much as they wanted to.
And so there's no individual charge per travel. So
Correct.
there's kind of an arbitrage issue there. Can the revenue from the profile offset the cost of travel, especially in an era where travel is going to be very expensive as we come back because airlines recoup. So I'm less inclined to think that one, but it's possible there might be some light there.
Okay.
But I think that the thing that we always somewhat get embroiled in the travel marketplace and the corporate travel marketplace, as if the enterprise doesn't buy any SaaS software. Now, the enterprise doesn't have any type of licensing agreement, or it's a corporation. Of course, that's ludicrous. They have lots of models. And a lot of folks in the corporate travel arena either work very closely with procurement or actually in procurement. And so I think the idea that there is a way to kind of move to more of a use per seat type of model is the logical way for us to go. And I think we will move away from transactions as a result.
Good. Okay. Since we're about to get clarity on the political front, we hope,
So.
in the next couple of days, let me ask you a politically sensitive question of a different type. What do you see for the future of GBTA?
Well, that's hard for me to comment on. I think that GBTA plays an essential role, but I'm a little concerned that apart from the controversy that caused the executive director to resign, apart from that issue, I'm concerned, any trade show should not be a revenue generating effort. That shouldn't be the focus. It should be advocacy. It should be representing the voice of the buyer, both politically and just, in the press and so forth. And I felt like there was such a focus on the trade show and making money at the trade show and bonuses tied to trade show. That's the wrong approach for this type of organization. And I think from what I've seen from Dave and what I've seen, some of the discussion about the positions of potential new board seats, I think we're going to see more of an evolution of GBTA back to what it should be, which is an adversary group, not an adversary group, but an advocate group, pardon me, for the corporate travel buying community.
Do you have any do you have any recommendations or preferences as who the new leader will be? We know it's not going to be Dave Hiltman, But do you think it should be someone from outside the travel industry or someone from inside the travel industry?
I think it should be a buyer. Someone who has at least ex-buyer or ex-travel management experience, someone who understands the industry and understands it from, the detail that's necessary. To have someone coming from outside the industry, and, as you said, I'm old. I've been in the industry for 38 years. You maybe even longer. There's so much that we just take for granted that we know, and even people who've been in the industry for 5 years would agree with this. That bringing somebody in to be an advocate of an industry you don't understand is not the best way to go. Someone needs to have either buyer background or TMC background, in my opinion.
Well, there you have it. Words from the Oracle of Travel from San Francisco, Mr. Norm Rose. Norm, we're just coming up on our time. I really appreciate you making the time to be with us today.
No connection to Oracle Corporation, by the way, which I can see from my window here.
Well, you got to better be.
We don't want to make Mr. Ellison angry or anything.
Fair enough. All right. Thanks for speaking with us, and have a great weekend.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Al, for taking the time.
You're welcome.